Hey guys, good morning. Happy Sunday. My name's Bryn. I'm so excited to be sharing with you guys today. I'm actually sharing with you from Kona, Hawaii. Not that you can tell. But yeah, thank you so much, Kirk, for inviting me to speak and just to share my testimony. It's such a blessing. And I hope that this touches or gives hope to somebody there today or watching online, and even if it's just one person that would make it all worth it. So anyways, like I said, I'm here to share with you guys some of my testimony. So I'll start at the beginning. When I was 1, my parents got divorced, and it didn't really affect me that much, I thought, at the time, because I was 1 and I didn't really know what was going on. But on the other hand, I didn't really ever get to be a part of a whole and healthy family unit. It caused a lot of disunity and hurt in the family that I wasn't even aware of, but that really started opening doors that just led to darker and darker places. And so when I was 2, somebody new was introduced into my life. And this person got really close to the family and was very trusted. And because of this, she had access to me and my sister Abby almost daily. This person ended up abusing my sister and I for the next 10 years, emotionally, physically, and sexually. And it got to a point where I thought that that's just how life is and that I was just going to have to live with it. During this time, my dad was really wrapped up in his work, and my mom was really struggling with depression and alcoholism. So they were both kind of in their own worlds. And at 12 years old, that person was finally removed from me and my sister's life. And a lot led up to that, and I won't really get into details, but leaving an abusive environment, I struggled with post-traumatic stress disorder. So for me, that looked like flashbacks, reoccurring nightmares of situations that had happened in the past, and just constant triggers of the last 10 years of abuse. I really did not know how to cope with this, and it isn't something that I had told anyone about yet. So at 12, I started using drugs. At first, it was just smoking weed and drinking and smoking cigarettes, but still at 12 years old, I went as far as using cocaine. The first time I used it, I actually almost overdosed, and I didn't want to tell anyone because I was 12 and I didn't want to get in trouble. But I ended up spending the night on the bathroom floor, shaking and throwing up blood. From that point at 12 years old on, addiction became a constant battle in my life, and a battle that I more often than not ended up losing. So this led to so many behaviors and choices that don't line up with my character. And at 15, I started breaking into cars and robbing them for money to buy drugs. And when that wasn't enough, I started hanging out with another group of people, and breaking into cars turned into hot wiring them and stealing them to sell for parts. My parents tried to intervene so many times before, but I never really listened to them, and I just kept spiraling. At 15, I got caught for stealing cars, and I was given an ultimatum. And my ultimatum was that either I could stay in Toronto, be homeless, and charged with grand theft auto, or I could just go to rehab willingly. So needless to say, I went to rehab, and I actually ended up being there for a year and a half. It was really good for me, and at least kept me sober for the time being. But most of all, it helped me to see that my childhood traumas didn't really have to define me anymore. After finishing rehab, I actually got a scholarship for math excellence to a university in Toronto, and I was motivated just to stay on a good path. I was also doing an aftercare program at the time where I was sober, and so things were really looking up. As a part of transitioning or like graduating out of the program, you have to either get a job or be going to school. And I was going to school, but I still had a few months in between when school started. And so I was just looking for a job to be able to just fully graduate out of my rehab program. And while I was looking for a job, I ended up going to what I thought was a job interview. And instead, I was taken to a parking lot and ended up getting raped and left there by myself. I remember that moment being one of the scariest moments of my life. And the worst part about that was that the person who did it actually videotaped it as well. After this, my hope for the world and my future left again. I didn't care about being on a good path. I felt disgusting. I just wanted to numb, so I went back to partying and using drugs. And not long after this, I ended up going to a party and not watching my drink close enough, and getting drugged and raped. And I don't really remember those next 3 days of my life. During this time, me and my older sister, Abby, got really close. She was only 2 years older than me, so there wasn't really much of an age difference. And she was my best friend. I was with her pretty much every day. We went through a lot of the same things, a lot of the same traumas in life, and she was the only person that I felt like I could really talk to, or that would really understand what I was going through. And at times our relationship was really rocky, but we always had each other's back. And we were really the only constant thing in each other's lives. My sister was also, she also had a past struggle with addiction, and she had been in and out of rehab programs for a lot of her life as well. And we both weren't doing very well at the time. We spent most of our time in places and with people that others most likely wouldn't feel safe around. The drug dealers, the gang members, pretty much the outcasts of society, and we were using drugs every day. Over the past 6 years, we kept hearing the same thing, and that's the path that we were on only leads to one place, and that's death. I heard it a lot, but I never actually believed it until it happened. So when I was 18, my big sister was murdered. That loss really spiraled me into a dark place, and for the next year and a half, I wanted to die every day. After that, in my attempt to feel better or feel something, I started looking for love and validation in all the wrong places. I started seeing someone who took full advantage of me, crashed my car, stole a few $1,000s, used my apartment as a trap house for him and his friends to sell drugs out of. And again, I got addicted to cocaine and Xanax. When he was finally out of the picture, I really tried to get my life back together, but the place I was in, that change really wasn't going to be easy. When I knew things really needed to change, I was waking up every morning screaming and crying because I was still alive. I hated myself. My struggle with addiction continued, and I went as far as using heroin. I'd lost over 40 pounds because of constant stress and drug use, which is about a third of my body weight. I couldn't control my emotions. I was constantly acting out. And a lot of the times that would result in me punching walls and pulling my hair out. I dropped out of university. I was constantly cursing myself just all day, every day, speaking out that I wanted to die and that I hated living and that I hated myself. I was really just being tortured in every area of my life. All of this led to me thinking that I was crazy and that that's just how things were going to be. My dad tried to intervene and get me help so many times. From, years of therapy, counseling, I saw a drug counselor, I saw naturopaths, doctors, and spent the year and a half in rehab. But nonetheless, he tried again and he took me to a deliverance session. I didn't really want to go, but at that point, I would have tried anything to feel better. And it wasn't an automatic switch, but it did switch my perspective of God from someone who was just letting me go through all of this trauma to someone who was right there with me through it all. It gave me a small piece of hope that I hadn't felt in a really long time. I remember getting back home that night to my apartment that I lived in by myself and just weeping on the floor and just thanking God for showing up. I never felt his presence that strong before, and I knew that that was going to be a turning point for me. After the deliverance session, I started praying daily and just trying to get into the word and even listening to the Bible on Audible. And after that session, I said that there wasn't an automatic switch and not everything was just a snap of a finger like that, but there were a few. For one, after that day at deliverance, I never woke up again screaming and crying, which was daily for about a year and a half. I was also just constantly trying to change my negative thoughts. And even if I didn't believe it in the moment, I would make myself walk in the opposite spirit. My dad knew that I needed to get out of my environment for any change to actually stick. So we ended up going to a road trip around the States, and halfway through ended up at Transform Our World, which is like a global Christian conference. And while I was there, I received a lot of prayer from a lot of really amazing people. But I also got attacked a lot during the time of being there and really struggled. I was kind of reverting back to acting out and having breakdowns and just feeling really hopeless. I was really embarrassed to meet anyone in that state as well, so I mostly just stayed in my room. But my dad was with me through it all. He was constantly the one who was reminding me to walk in the opposite spirit, to change my thoughts, and interceding for me constantly. He actually ended up missing most of that conference to be there for me. After Transform Our World, my dad knew that I wasn't ready to be back home in Toronto, so he took me to New Brunswick to stay with my grandma who lives there, Brenda, who a lot of you guys probably know. But he didn't just take me there and leave me. He stayed with me for the whole 3 weeks. He put everything in his life on the back burner for me because he knew that I needed him. You know, his business, his life, everything went on hold, and he was so committed to just helping me walk with the Lord and get better. At no point did he make me feel like I was too much for him, even though at times I probably was. And even through everything that had happened in our lives, I've never questioned his love for me. He was always there to be the voice of authority when I needed it, or even just to help me stand when I couldn't do it by myself. All of this and the way that my dad has been there for me and loved me through the good, the bad, and the ugly has just so beautifully emulated God's love. I was able to start to understand the Father's heart because I had my dad on earth that was actually a reflection of that. And to any dads listening now, that's a huge part of the weight that you carry as a father. You can emulate the Father's love, or you can skew your children's image of what a father looks like. And a lot of the times, people's earthly fathers can hugely affect someone's ability to see their heavenly Father clearly. But for me, I was so lucky that I had an earthly father that was there to guide me and to love me through it all, because the only thing that has ever brought true and lasting healing to my life was through a relationship with God. I know that I couldn't have gotten through anything I did without the love, grace, and mercy of my heavenly Father. And this story is just such a beautiful testimony of fighting for family. And I did just talk a little bit about my dad fighting for me because that is a huge part of my story. But the conversation of fighting for family is such a huge topic that deserves so much more time than I have today. Yeah. But in the months following this trip to New Brunswick, I worked with a life coach. And in session, my coach would let the Holy Spirit lead her. She had a prophetic gifting as well. So for the first time in my life, I started to hear prophetic words about my life and the way that God wanted to use me. A lot of the times, those words seemed almost impossible, and I could not imagine God being able to use someone that was as messy as me to glorify his kingdom, or really for anything at all. But at this time, it was really a driving force in my life, and I really just wanted to become the person that God created me to be. So through these sessions and spending more time with my dad and my grandma and the EHOP family, I started to learn more about God and really wanted to walk in the fullness of life that God has for each and every one of us. But I still didn't really know how. The shift in my life has been pretty fast, and looking back, sometimes it's even hard for me to understand, but Jesus just completely took over. It was like once I had a taste of who God was, I could not go back, and I just started running, just full tilt towards him. And following the Lord, he brought me to Hawaii to Youth with a Mission to do a discipleship training school, which was amazing. And for the first time in my life, I really got to understand and walk into a relationship with Jesus. Cultivating that relationship with Jesus has been one of the most life-changing and life-giving things that I have ever done. I started to learn about the character of God, the nature of God. I got to learn about his heart. I got to learn about how present and involved he is in our lives. As a kid, I always viewed God as someone who was so distant and detached. But the truth is really the exact opposite of that. And part of building this relationship with Jesus was a heart transformation. I started to fall in love with the creator of the universe in a way that I didn't even know was possible. I had heard about, hearing God's voice from others and from like YouTube videos, but I never really believed it before, and I definitely didn't think that I could do it. And even when people would talk to me about it, I'd be like, okay, maybe you can hear God's voice, but I cannot. And the first week of my DTS, the lectures were about hearing God's voice, and just learning about it. The idea made me so excited, and it made my heart race, but it also kind of made me frustrated because I just felt like I couldn't do it. And there was just a fear that came with just trying to step out in that. And I remember it was during my 2-week quarantine that I had to do when I was here, when I first got to Hawaii, and I just sat in my room and was just ready to take that first step and just to try. So the first thing I asked God was what he thought about me. And it came like a flood. And just so many things came to me all at once, things that I didn't think or know about myself, that in that moment, the Lord just really revealed to me. After that, the Lord started revealing so many ways that he speaks to me individually. I started getting prophetic words. I started getting visions. He was speaking to me through dreams in the night. I was even getting physical responses in my body when I heard or saw something that the Lord was trying to highlight to me. It was amazing, and at the time, it really felt unbelievable. And after that, obedience just kind of came naturally. And to me, that makes sense, because obedience isn't supposed to come out of a place of duty or thinking that this is what you have to do, because that's not going to last. My obedience came as a response to God's love and faithfulness. And it was a response that came out of my love for the Lord as well. I wanted to tell you guys one of the really cool stories. It was one of the first times about hearing God's voice that just really blew me away, and it was during my DTS as well. And I have been or had been on depression medication for years. It was something that doctors thought I just had a chemical imbalance. I couldn't really function off of the depression medication. I was on a pretty high dose that if I missed a day or just forgot to take them, that I would go pretty much crazy. I would, like, my emotions were a roller coaster, and I couldn't really function. And every day I'm like taking my pill, and every day I'm hearing the same thing. I'm hearing, Bryn, like, you don't need that. You have me. You don't rely on this medication anymore because you rely on me. And every morning I'm taking these, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on, why I'm hearing this, but like, I definitely need these, like, for sure. And so I just keep taking them. And one day I'm like taking it again, and the Lord's like, Bryn, what did I already tell you? Like, you don't need these anymore. And I'm kind of like having this conversation with God where I'm like, you know what happens when I don't take these. Like, I'm not trying to go crazy on everyone here at this discipleship training school. Like, I don't want to put them through that. I don't want to go through that. So I kept taking them, and I talked to some of the staff about it, and I told them what happened when I didn't take them. And they were like, yeah, no, you should keep taking them. If you feel like you should stop, maybe go to a doctor and like slowly get off them if you feel like that's something that the Lord's telling you to do. And then I just kept getting words from the Lord that he was like, Bryn, stop taking these. And I'm like, I cannot stop taking these. And then one day in prayer and fasting, I got this vision, and I'm like lying in my room, like face down, just praying. And the Lord gives me this image, and it's me going down onto the deck, kind of where there's like a cafeteria area with tables and stuff. And I'm down there. I have like my 2 bottles of my pills, and I'm pouring these pills in the garbage. And there's a few girls standing behind me with their hands on me, just praying for me. And then there's other people that are on the deck that are clapping and just cheering me on. And I remember after that vision, I like open my eyes, and like my eyes are filled with tears. And I was like, okay, you know what? I've gotten enough confirmation. This is the Lord. I'm just going to do it. So I FaceTimed my dad, and I was like, I'm going to do it. The Lord is speaking this. I'm going to do it. My dad's like in a meeting, like, okay, are you sure it's from the Lord? Because he's seen what's happened when I haven't taken them, and it's not good for anyone. And I tell him about the confirmations. He's like, okay, go do it. And I go downstairs. I get like my bottle of pills, and I get my backup bottle as well. And I go downstairs to the deck. I'm standing in front of the garbage cans, and I'm like, some of my friends and some of the staff are sitting on the deck, and I'm just like, okay, guys, like, I'm just gonna pour these out. Like, I don't need these anymore. And they're kind of all looking at me like I'm crazy because I've told them what happens, and I tell them the confirmation. They're like, you know what, do it. Like, this is definitely the Lord. Just do it. And these 4 girls come behind me. They're laying hands on me, praying for me. I dump my pill bottle out in the trash can, and the people on the deck are cheering. And I realize it's the exact vision that the Lord has just given me. The same people on the deck, the same people behind me praying. Yeah, and it was insane. And like, after doing something like that, I was like, okay, well, like, I can't even, like, I poured them out. Like, I opened the thing and poured them out. I can't even go get the pill bottle back if I wanted to. Like, trash is gone. And so even after that, just kind of with anxiety, like, okay, Lord, like, just praying into it, just like, please come through. Like, I cannot do this. Like, I trust that this is you, and I trust that this is what you're asking me to do. And so I'm doing it. And after that, it was so insane. I didn't have any withdrawals from stopping taking the medication. I didn't feel any depression. Like, the Lord just kind of just removed that from my life. Yeah, just no side effects or anything, which is unheard of. Like, a doctor would tell you that, that is like something that should definitely not be done because of the effects that it can have. And it didn't make any sense to me. It didn't make any sense, but that's what radical obedience is. It doesn't have to make sense, and it shouldn't have to make sense for us to just say yes to God. And our yes should not be dependent on whether something makes sense to us or whether something seems possible. Our yes should be rooted in love and just full trust for the Lord. And I'm the kind of person, that likes to know why before I do something. And I've always been like this, just kind of like a big picture kind of person. And so when I first started hearing the Lord's voice, that was always my question. He would tell me something or ask me to do something, and I was always like, okay, but why? And, the Lord knows me better than anyone else. So a lot of the times he would answer my why. And then one day I realized that as I was asking the Lord why, my obedience became conditional on knowing the why behind what the Lord was asking of me. And, it's really about a heart posture, and it's something that I really had to, be able to look at, because it's not a bad thing to ask the Lord why. Like, he loves us. He wants to tell us why. He wants to give us, understanding, but understanding is different than asking the Lord for justification. And so for me, like, I still ask the Lord why all the time. And it's because, I want to understand. I want to know him better. I want to know his heart better. But if I'm asking the Lord to justify himself, I'm really not in a place to do that. So I really had to repent for that and understand that God does not owe me an explanation every time that he does something that I don't understand. Yeah, and again, I'm not saying it's bad to ask God why. I still do all the time, but my response of obedience is not conditional on whether or not God wants to tell me why. And that's just part of trust and relationship with the Lord. And now when I ask God why, and he tells me, I'm able to see that this is a gift that he's giving me, that he doesn't have to, that it's not my right to know why, but it's actually a privilege that the Lord is giving me because he loves me. Yeah, so it's just been such an amazing journey, just being in relationship with the Lord. And even though I haven't been walking with him for that long, I'm someone that's either all in or I'm not. And the way I was raised was kind of as like a Sunday Christian. So we went to church on Sundays most weeks, but we left our faith there, and it didn't really affect the way that we lived our lives at all for the rest of the week. And that's just what I thought that Christianity was. I had never seen it lived out before. I didn't know that that was possible. And so, with that, I never really engaged with anyone at church. I never really listened very much. And when I got old enough eventually to say that I wasn't going to go, I just didn't go. And I think a big piece of that was the way that I viewed Christianity was as something that was, rules and guidelines. I viewed it as something that was going to be restrictive for the way I wanted to live my life. I viewed it as something that was boring and dull, and I was like, why would I want that? And building a relationship with the Lord that I didn't even know that I could have has been so beautiful and just filled me with so much joy that I also didn't even know was possible. And hearing his voice gave me this thrill and this intense excitement to wake up every day and just ask him more and just, ask him what he wanted to say about that day. I finally understood that Jesus is not just another religious figurehead for a dead religion, but that he is alive and that he is close and that he is personal. During my discipleship training school, this really just was solidified for me, that this is what I want. I want my life to just be this pursuit after the Lord. I wanted to be close to him. I wanted to be able to hear his voice, and I wanted his voice to be the loudest voice in my life. And really, I just wanted like whatever he had for me. And what I didn't want was anything that would possibly separate me from him. And just seeing what the Lord was able to do with my life in such a short time, like healing my depression, removing social anxiety, breaking off the chains of addiction, healing wounds and hurts from my past, allowing me to walk in forgiveness, and even just for the first time in my life, just experiencing being truly happy. In DTS, I felt this joy that was just indescribable sometimes. And I still don't really know, like maybe I'd never been truly happy before, or like part of me feels like this is not even happiness. This is just like some next level joy that comes straight from the Lord. But it was different than anything I'd ever felt before. And even naming it like happiness or joy, like it didn't even feel like enough. So me and some friends renamed it and like created a new emotion that was just like pure joy of the Lord, because nothing else came even close to expressing how I was feeling. And like I said before, I'm either someone that's all in or I'm not. And I've so clearly seen the effects of viewing Christianity as something that you can just pick and choose the pieces that you want and the pieces that you don't want in your life. It doesn't work. You aren't going to see the fruit in your life from that. And so I made a decision that I'm all in. And for me, that looked like full surrender. And not just the parts of my life that were easy to let go of, or the parts that were easy to change, but even going as far as just asking the Lord what full surrender looked like and being okay to whatever that he said back. And for me, I wanted everything in my life to align with the Lord. I wanted to love people the best I could. I wanted to walk in complete obedience. I wanted to take every thought captive under the authority of Jesus Christ. I wanted to be able to look at my life and see Jesus reflected in the way that I lived. And I wanted other people to look at my life and to see that as well. And so I had to learn what full surrender looked like and what that meant for me. And I knew at this point, what was expected of me more or less as a Christian, but I wanted the Lord to show me what he expected from me individually. And so even just asking him and just like really understanding and getting just clarity on like my personal convictions. And, he has revealed so much to me. And, for example, some of them, one of my personal convictions is not using any substances. And, with that, it's some Christians can have a drink and that can be fine for them. But I am not one of those people, especially with my struggles with addiction and substance abuse in the past. Having one drink is not an option for me. And so the Lord, has called me into a life of sobriety. And I really just, I'm honored to make that commitment to the Lord. Another one was the music that I listened to. I used to listen to a lot of trap and rap music. I didn't think that it was really a big deal. And I didn't really listen to any other types of music. I just really liked that. And I didn't really think it made an impact in my life. One day in prayer, I asked the Lord, or I was just talking to the Lord, and he asked me if I would give up rap music. And this probably doesn't seem like a big deal, and maybe to some of you, it still doesn't seem like a big deal, but I have been building this rap playlist for years. And also it on another hand, it felt like part of a connection with my sister, because that's all we listened to together. And we really bonded over it. And so letting go of it felt like I was letting go of a part of our connection and memories. But I said yes, and I stopped listening to it for a few weeks, and I only listened to worship music, and I felt more connected to the Lord, and I felt like, I could just hear his voice clearer. But I still didn't really understand the big deal of like why I was giving up rap music, or why it was a big deal what I was listening to. And so one day I listened to it again. And all of this music is just about, drugs, sex, money, lust, crimes, just all of these kinds of things. And the moment that I listened to it, I got pulled back. And all of a sudden, I felt this like immense temptation to just go back to my old lifestyle. I felt like this like anxiety of this like feeling of needing to be like in a trap house, or like needing to smoke, or to be around the kinds of people that I used to be around, or to use. And I hadn't felt like this in a long time at this point, because rationally, like in my mind, I knew that life with Jesus was better. I knew that my life was more full than it had ever been before. I knew that I was exactly where I was supposed to be, just in the center of God's will. And then I realized that it was the music. What we listen to and what we see has so much power. And God tells us this throughout scripture, that our eyes and that our ears are a gate to the soul, and that we have to discern and be careful to what we allow into our ear and our eye gates. And this music wasn't just music that I listened to because I liked the beat. This music was my life. It was my reality. It related and connected to so many pieces of my story. And it took me a while to realize and really believe that the way I was living was not normal. And, that it was so far from normal. And most people, can listen to these songs and hear that, like, no, this is not normal. And they've never experienced any of these kinds of things. And it may feel like it doesn't impact them, which is not true, but, may feel like that. And for me, this music, it normalized and it glorified my life of sin and brokenness and destruction. And it brought me back to something that I had fought so hard to get out of. And so in that moment, I realized that I couldn't listen to this. And so, I laid down to the Lord rap music, and just committed to using my discernment and my biblical worldview when I choose what music I listen to. But with that, like, the music I was listening to was really awful. I know there's like some, Christian rap, or like, but that was not what I was listening to. So, another thing that I had to surrender to the Lord was my control over my future. I've tried to direct my life, and I was not very good at it, as you can hear from my whole story. I was not good at it. And so I just trust God, and I believe that what he has for me is so much better than anything that I could even ever dream of for myself. And so I laid down my future, and I just committed to seeking the Lord before making any big decisions in my life. And when like looking for next steps. And this has brought me so much peace and joy. And it really just takes the pressure off me as well, to feel like I need to take all the right steps or be in the right places at the right times, because I understand that I'm walking in full surrender, and whatever the Lord has for me is going to come. And, when I'm focused on just walking right in the center of the Lord's will and nowhere else, if that's my focus, it's impossible for me to miss what the Lord has for me. And I've even gone as far as just surrendering my community and my friends to the Lord. I trust that he's going to build a community for me, even here in Kona, of people that I'm supposed to be around, and that he's going to surround me with exactly who I'm supposed to be with. And, that's still part of my prayers. It's not something that I feel like happens fast but I'm also in that full surrender, in that place of full surrender. I'm okay with waiting for that community, and I'm okay with waiting and trusting that, the Lord is doing everything for a reason, and that it's going to come. And just with all that, like, I don't want to be a lukewarm Christian. Lukewarm Christianity, just picking the parts that you like and the parts that you don't like, that is not what it means to follow Jesus. He accepts us, he loves us, and he meets us where we are, but that is not an excuse to live with one foot in and one foot out. I want God to use me. I want him to take over my life. I want to walk in the plans and the purposes that he has for me. I want to hear his voice in new ways all the time. I want to walk in the authority that Jesus gives us through the Holy Spirit for God to use me to heal people. I want to reveal to people who Jesus is. I want to encounter him, and I want to stare at his face every single day of my life. And ultimately, like, I just want to love him more and more. And walking in full surrender has totally changed the direction of my life. In the last year, just letting the Lord have control over my life, he has done so much, and it's been so insane. And, just a few things to just show you guys, like, how good our God is, like I said before, he healed my depression. He, delivered me from suicide and addiction. He took away my social anxiety. I was delivered from an ungodly lifestyle. With Jesus in my life, I've overcome my entire past. And, this might sound crazy, and I'm not saying this to, say like, oh, look at all these things that I'm doing. And because, like, I couldn't even function a year ago. 17 months ago, I was waking up every day screaming to die. I couldn't sit in a room full of people without having a meltdown. I couldn't even sleep at night, throughout the night, without waking up to use drugs. I was not a functioning member of society. I didn't accomplish anything by myself. And, that's why even this list of what the Lord has done, like, really just hypes me up, because it's not me. And, like, I know that it's not me. This is all the Lord. I've completed my discipleship training school with YWAM. The Lord has opened doors for me to be able to speak at 2 global conferences already. I wrote my first book, and I'm starting to co-write a second one with my dad soon about fighting for family, which I'm really excited about. I've started to walk into my giftings, my callings. And I'm just about to finish another school too, actually, called North Star, which is a school of biblical sexuality, which has been so amazing. And, with all of that being said, like, this is the God we serve. Like, he does not hold back anything good from us. And, I've just really been able to see that firsthand in this last year, which has just been so amazing. I just want to end with something that I feel like the Lord revealed to me in my quiet time a few weeks ago. And, I was sitting, I was in the Word and just talking to the Lord and thinking about my life and just so many lives of the people around me. I was just thinking about the way I was living my life and the way that I see so many people in my generation are living, just always searching for the next thing, the next hit of dopamine, like serotonin, adrenaline, whatever it is. Like, we want instant gratification. We're searching for meaning. We're searching for purpose. And so often we're not finding it. And this was all true for me. I spent my whole life searching to feel full, or at least just not completely empty. And the thing is that my generation is not going to find that meaning or that rest until they find Jesus. I was thinking about why we're so empty and broken and lost. And I think that there's a lot of things that, contribute to this. But that's when I felt like God reminded me of some of the words that I've had over my life. Like I I'm called to see blind eyes open. I'm called to see limbs grow out. I'm called to see massive revivals and salvation. I'm called to walk in signs, wonders, and miracles. And I don't say this because it sounds cool. I don't say this because it sounds like good, but I say this because I truly believe it. And I say this because Jesus told me, and I believe him. In John 150, Jesus tells us that we're called to see greater things than these. And I don't think that that's just true for me and for my life. I think that this is true for my whole generation. I think that God has created my whole generation to walk in insane supernatural authority. And not because of who we are and not because of anything that we've done, but because of who our Father is. And with that, this, I feel like this insane calling on my generation. It's no wonder that we're feeling empty. It's no wonder that we're all searching. It's no wonder that we all feel so lost and broken. And it's because we're called to so much more. And a life without Jesus just isn't enough. And it will never be enough. Yeah. So I have heard, some stories about the internship at Eastgate, just stories of God showing up and stories of God encountering students in such crazy ways. And so just ending off, I would just want to encourage you, if you're thinking about doing the internship or even just want to learn more about it, take that step of faith. I promise that God will meet you there.